And we're back.
We're
so back.
So,
Yes.
tell
you.
what is the thing? Either you learned or you experienced or you want to share that happened to you?
I did actually learn something interesting the other day that I did not know. I'm not very smart, so like I don't know how good I'm gonna be able to explain this.
You're very smart.
Okay. So apparently the color purple doesn't exist.
Oh,
So
you see, I didn't know that.
well, let me tell you.
I know it's a mixture.
Well, it is. It's a mix of red and blue.
Yeah.
But so apparently the way light works and the way color works, right? If the wavelengths when it hits an object and you see the color reflecting back off of it, when your brain perceives blue and red mixed with each other, your brain creates the color purple. So for purple and magenta, it's the same thing. So it's your brain creating that color, but it's not actually a color.
So any color like brown or colors like that, they're not colors, right?
I don't know about those. I know for purple and magenta it is. So like because they're not on the
Primary.
spectrum, the
Oh, they're
light
not the
spectrum.
Ah.
Yeah, so like it's whatever. This is why I'm not like, this is why a scientist would probably be able to understand this better, like a physicist or something. But essentially the way light travels, right, in waves, like you have blue, red, yellow, and like green. And so like apparently when our brain sees red and blue, it's not actually a color that the world is creating. It's a color that our brain is computing. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does.
At least that's from the readings I have done on the internet, which, as we know, the internet is the best place to get one's information. That's what I gather. So apparently purple and magenta are not actual colors. It's just our brain perceiving that color, which I thought that was really fascinating because as a photographer / cinematographer, I was like, what does this mean? What does this mean? And voila, and here we are. Now I shared the fact with you. Your world didn't change.
Actually, I'm reading this book. It's called "You Are What You Watch." Watching a film or a series or TV, it has an impact on us. His point is that the film impacts us in a lot of levels, but also in biological level. So what they did,
interesting.
At some point, they went to a movie theater, and I don't know why, and scientists are amazing people. They calculated the amount, the molecules or the types of chemicals that are at the air after you watch a movie. So depending which genre you watch, you have different breathe. Like your breath has different result after you watch a horror or a comedy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we feel it differently. Obviously, horror feels different than comedy.
Yeah.
But also the chemistry in the air, the atmosphere in the cinema is different.
So, what are we doing this week or this episode?
So this episode, we watched Frances Ha. And our guest is Sam Martens, which is my mentor. She's she works as an executive in development.
Okay,
she has an amazing resume. Awesome. She has worked in in production before, but now she works in development.
Very cool.
But we'll let her tell us her story. Yeah. And voila, that's it. Let's move on to the next.
Tell us about your background, Sam.
Absolutely.
How did you get into this crazy film world?
Yes. Oh boy. All right. So I actually grew up in Vancouver, Canada, on the west coast of Canada, which feels very, very far away a lot of the time from, the Hollywood system. I'm sure both of you can kind of relate to that, having not grown up here.
Definitely.
And so I always really loved, my first love was really books. That was really what got me into like story. It's just like having a love of novels and feeling like books were just a really kind of important thing in my life that really affected me in different ways. And that was kind of my first kind of emotional connection to this idea of storytelling, which then kind of eventually evolved into a love of films and photography and visual storytelling. but I had no idea that it was possible to have a career in the film industry.
All of us.
No grasp on that was a possibility. I knew absolutely no one that worked in film or had no family members that did it. So I went to university not for film. I did like economics and political science.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because in my head I was like, there are 3 careers. There's engineer, there's doctor, and then there's lawyer. And I knew that I would be terrible at being an engineer and terrible at being a doctor.
You're like, I'm gonna go lawyer.
And so I was like, I guess I'll go lawyer.
Oh my god.
So I had some vague idea that I was going to go to law school. Graduated from university, moved back to Vancouver. Vancouver has a lot of film sets.
Yeah.
There's a great tax credit there, a lot of kind of booming production landscape. So I would always see the film sets around town, but I would have very little idea what actually happened, you know, in those big white tents and the big work trucks and all the kind of PAs buzzing around. And I was always curious, and I was looking for a way to delay law school for a little bit because I did not want to commit myself to that. I had no desire to, and so
makes sense.
I kind of randomly on a whim one day applied for a bunch of jobs in the film industry, and I had no idea how to do it. I didn't know, you know, how a production worked or anything. I went on Indeed, the job website.
Oh my god.
And I searched up film jobs. And the only place that hired me was an extras casting agency. So basically a company that was doing background casting for like Vancouver films and Vancouver TV shows. Which was kind of a very weird niche entry point into the world of film. But I did that for maybe about a year, helping cast background actors. It was a very strange and oftentimes stressful job.
I was gonna say, I've heard horror stories of like just having to deal with extras.
Oh my god, it's so wild. There's always like different adventures going on, or like the needs of production are so weird. Like you'll need to find like 60 people that are willing to shave their head by Friday, you know, like things like that.
We need bald men.
Yeah, exactly. Weird things. But did that for about a year, quit. And was like, still like, I need to go to law school. Like this, I was still like, the smart, responsible thing for me to do would be to go to law school. So, but I kind of decided to give the film industry one more shot because I was really intrigued by it, right? So I kind of came up with a halfway solution between the two, and I started working at a production company, but in their legal affairs department.
Oh,
that's the closest to legal and
exactly, right? So in my head, I was like, I'm still getting good experience for law school, but I can kind of appease my film interest for another year or so before I commit myself to law school. And in that job, it's called business affairs. It's kind of the legal and financial part of the film industry, and I was working for a bunch of entertainment lawyers, doing things like paperwork and contracts and insurance applications and guild and union documentation and all of the kind of like legal paperwork that makes the industry run. And I learned a ton, but I quickly realized that I would watch the lawyers do their jobs, and then I would watch the other side of the company, the creative executives and producers and production executives do their job, and I was like, why am I doing this? Like, why can I not do
paperwork?
Exactly. I was like, I want to go be on a movie set and talk about like story and scripts and like give notes with writers, and like that sounded so cool to me. And so I did that for a little bit, and then I quit, and I decided that I needed to go straight to the source, and I needed to go work on set. I needed to get experience on a movie set, actually learn how it was made. I had some vague idea in my head at this point that I wanted to produce. I didn't even really know what producing meant at this point in my life. And all I knew was that, you know, if you want to do something in this industry, maybe try to go work for the person that does that, right? So I was like, in my head, what if I try to go work for a producer? Which I did. I got a job on set of a big HBO TV show that was coming to town. I got a job as a producer's assistant.
Oh, cool.
And my life kind of changed from that job. I was working, you know, long hours. It was like probably like 12 to 15-hour days sometimes, like out in the middle of nowhere, like rural farmland, night shoots, all this stuff. It was cold, and yet I loved it. Like I had the best time working on set. And so I did that for, I think that show was like maybe 8 months or so, and the filmmakers asked me if I wanted to come work on their next project with them.
Cool.
And that kind of changed my life. I then moved from place to place with them and worked on various sets that they were working on.
In Vancouver or?
I started in Vancouver, then I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, worked there for a year for them on 2 productions, and then moved to LA, worked in LA with them for about a year. And then at that point I was in LA and I was like, okay, well, I need to get experience now in the kind of like Hollywood system here, like agencies, management companies, development. I had no idea how any of that worked. And so I jumped into doing that, and I have been working in development ever since.
That's so cool.
So kind of like a weird, non-traditional, twisty path into doing this. It's very much not the norm. Most people do the kind of like film school, agency, into development path, and
oh, I see. Yeah. You're right.
much more traditional, but yeah, that's how I made it.
I'm still waiting maybe to go to law school.
Still one
you're
day.
You're getting all this great
One
experience
day
from law
I'll
school.
appease my parents and finally
I know.
go to law school.
I can just
and
imagine what the conversations
they're
are
like
at home.
Yeah, they're kept being like, okay, she's finally gonna go. No, just kidding. Okay, no.
In her 80s, she'd be like,
Yeah.
now it's the day.
Now, finally, it's
Now
the time.
Harvard is the time.
Exactly. Wow, maybe I can live out my like Elle Woods fantasy that
Oh
I'm
my God,
85 years old or something.
All in pink.
Yes, fabulous.
Also, one note, she has been a part of a lot of people will love it. You've been a part of a big movie.
Yeah. Well, one of the productions that I worked on in Atlanta was Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Oh,
so
very cool.
I was working for that and another Christmas special that Marvel was doing, and I was really lucky in that I got to be on from the very start of pre-production all the way to the like release of the movie. So it was really cool. I got to kind of really see the whole entire producing process of a giant, really cool Marvel movie.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's
I've never
incredible
heard about
experience.
someone that is from the beginning till the end.
Yeah. Because luckily I was like, at that point, had a really established working relationship with the producers, and so they were like, yeah, we need you from the very beginning to the very end, and which was great because then I got to see kind of the entire process.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's such a great way to learn about the industry instead of going to film school.
Yeah.
I bet it was tiring. Because you had to
Oh my
move
gosh,
on.
absolutely. And it's like, I always describe working in production like that for like years and years on end, because we would do like, we would film something, and then while we were doing post on that thing, we would be prepping and then shooting the next thing, overlapping. It was never just like chill, like, okay, take a couple months. It was like bang productions, right? And so exhausting, very cool, like really, really cool experiences. But I also always kind of describe working in production and being on set for like long periods of time on location like that is kind of like almost like a toxic relationship. Like you love it and you're addicted to it, but it's also kind of bad for you.
Yeah, totally get the feel. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something about this industry that like keeps you going even after like months and months and months on a show where you're just like, I hate my life.
Yeah.
I kind of like
it's like
it too.
exhilarating.
Yeah,
it's an
weird.
adrenaline rush,
Yeah.
and it's also just so cool. We get to work on movies.
Yeah. Well, we always have crazy stories at the end of it too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure you've got
wild
some.
stories. Yeah.
Oh, that's
very
very
true.
cool. What the that's a
that's
incredible
a journey,
honestly.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, no, it's a weird one. It's my life was it was going through it. I felt like I had no idea what I'm doing, by the way. Like now looking back, it all feels very linear. Like everything led to the next thing and it makes sense. And at the time I was like, what the hell is going on? I'm just going with the flow. Now I'm moving here. Now I'm doing this. Now I'm driving to this city. Like it was, made no sense.
I think that's what like, the way I see it, like with people who fall into film, I think the people who like didn't necessarily expect themselves to be in this industry are kind of like the best people to have in this industry, because like we're a lot more humble about our beginnings and not so much this like ego driven kind of personality where it's like, I make movies.
So, okay, let's move to the movie.
Yeah, let's talk about the movie. You picked Frances Ha. Why?
did.
Tell us.
Why this film? Yeah.
I know it can be kind of a controversial one. It's just a comfort movie to me. I have watched it so many times. I think I watched it for the first time when I was maybe 17 or something.
Okay.
I think I was youngish, and it's just one of those movies, almost kind of like a favorite novel or something where you come back to it at different times in your life and you get something slightly different out of it every time. I find it really kind of heartwarming and cozy and very kind of uplifting, even though it's kind of a mess of a movie. And I think that there's something that I just really strongly identify with the characters and the story. And I think part of the reason why I like to kind of tell people about it is that I think that like when you just, it's kind of a difficult movie to pitch because it's what I would call a pretty like low concept movie. Like it doesn't really have like a really like high concept hook to it. It's more of just kind of a character study about the shit show that it is to be 27 and trying to make it in an artistic career. And in a city that maybe feels like cold and isolating and like all the things that kind of come along with that. And it's kind of, that doesn't sound very interesting, and yet for some reason I just find that it's so like relatable and heartwarming and beautiful, and really affects me.
Yeah, it is. It's an interesting movie because I was telling Kelly earlier, it doesn't feel like it has a storyline. It feels more like we're watching journal entries of like some girl's life.
Yeah.
Her arc is the story, right? Ultimately, the way she kind of goes from kind of being lost and not knowing what she wants to do with her life and feeling like she's got to fulfill certain things, almost like when she goes to Paris, it's like almost like, oh, this is something that, you know, I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to travel. I'm supposed to experience life. And then she kind of finds her thing, right? Like she takes the desk job at the dance company and then does her own show and sort of finds some stability, and that's her arc. And I think my question for you more than anything, it's like because it's such it doesn't have a story, right? Like it's not like you I don't know how the pitch would have worked. And I guess in that part, like in development, when you're looking at these ideas, these scripts, these concepts, like does something like that worry people? Like when they're like, well, it really just feels like a glimpse of life and not necessarily a storyline? Or
I think it definitely does, and I think especially where the industry is right now, I think that for better or for worse, the way that, you know, studio executives and people in power tend to operate right now is in an extremely risk-averse fashion. And so I think that would be not an impossible movie to get greenlit today, but probably a difficult one.
It depends who's doing it also, right?
Yeah,
who's
completely. Absolutely. And I think that like ultimately you kind of, I think not everyone, but most people in the industry would be maybe thinking that a more kind of commercial story is something with that like high concept hook to it that has a very clear narrative structure that maybe feels like just a lot more kind of like the type of movie that like if you pitch it in a log line, people are going to understand what they can expect from it, and that therefore that's going to draw people to a movie theater to spend their money to go see it. And this movie has none of those things. It's really not. It's the opposite of that. It's kind of like, as you said, this kind of messy character study feels very kind of like almost like sketches kind of.
Yeah, it reminded me of theater at some point. I was like,
yes, it's very, I think, inspired by a lot of theater. And it's very inspired by a lot of like movement and stuff from the theater, I think. And something that I think about that movie a lot is that there really is no antagonist. Like there's not any sort of external force that's really working against her. The antagonist is herself.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would say money.
Which one is? Do you mean the Adam Driver character?
No, money. Like
money.
Oh, money.
But she does that to herself to an extent, right? Like she doesn't necessarily make the effort to go look for the thing that will find her stability, because she is a creative person and is looking to stay and
she goes to Paris for a weekend and puts it on her credit card.
Yeah.
Like it's just like, I think that like, yes, money is an obstacle, but I think it's not the antagonist. I think she is the antagonist that puts herself in that situation. Yeah. And I find that fascinating that they were able to make this movie that I think feels so relatable. And to me, she feels like, maybe you don't agree, but I feel like she feels like a very kind of sympathetic character. She's so annoying and awkward, but in a very sympathetic way to me. But I am so in awe that they were able to do that without kind of like a traditional antagonist. But yeah, no, I do think it would be a hard movie to get made nowadays. I think that, but a lot of it is who is making it. I think that you had this team of creatives that were, you know, that was really what they were doing in like 2007 when this movie came out. It was very like, they were part of this like mumblecore aesthetic of filmmakers. I think it was made for probably like $2 million or something. I don't know the exact number. I think it was like under 3, I want to say. And all that kind of factors into it, but definitely not definitely not like an obvious easy commercial hit or anything 100%. That would be made nowadays.
Yeah, because like rewatching it, it's funny because I watched it when it first came out.
Oh, did you?
And I always like, I mean, I liked it at the time. I think this time it was really funny to watch it because it had a very different perspective on it, especially now that I'm older. And like I'm older than the character now, and it's just like there's elements of her where there's a little bit of that oldness in me that's like, just get your shit together, like stop it, so it's really interesting to see that. But it is funny to like watch it, and like it feels very influenced actually by we talked about this like literally earlier, the French New Wave. It has a very French New Wave vibe to it. It has a very indie vibe to it. Like it almost looks like it's like just these kids that went out and shot their daily life. Like it's very, very different than what we're used to seeing out there.
And also there were times in the film that I was confused what decade we are.
Feels kind of timeless in a way.
It feels like, is it 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I love that. I love something that Noah Baumbach, the director and co-writer, does with a lot of his movies is in the like opener of the movie, he does that thing where he'll tell you everything you need to know about the movie. Like he'll tell you what this movie is going to be about in the opening scene. Like I think it's his movie Squid and the Whale, which I think came out after this movie, maybe before. I don't remember. I don't know what year that movie is. But the movie is about like a really complicated marriage relationship or like a separation between a dad and a mom and their kids, and the kids kind of like take sides. And they open the movie where the family is playing a tennis match, and one of the kids announces the opening line, and the line is, it's you and mom versus dad and me. And they're talking about the tennis match, but they're also just talking about their entire family familial structure and like what the movie is going to be about, which is about these kids forced to take sides in this really messy divorce. And I love that he does that. It's like a thing that other filmmakers will do as well, but I think he does that so well. And Frances Ha does it in this kind of like very French Nouveau Wave inspired musical sequence between Frances and her friend Sophie running around New York City kind of being idiots.
I was listening to a podcast after, and they said that there isn't another, or they couldn't remember another film that in their intro they have 90 seconds of like pure friendship.
It's Jules and Jim.
It's
a really famous French movie that I also really love.
Great,
so there is another one.
It is,
like
and I think it's like a direct reference to that movie, because it's about those two men and these two women just like having fun with each other next to this jaunty, or like alongside this jaunty tune. I don't know, I find it so heartwarming.
I really love the rhythm. The editing in this film it made it like sometimes when you're rewatching family, tapes from the past. It was like,
Felt
okay,
like
it was like a diary of hers.
Very like lived in feeling.
It feels very honest in its making, which I think is what probably gives a little bit of that comfort vibe, and like I think that's what makes it so relatable.
Absolutely. And I think it's such an interesting contrast, because I do think it's so lived in and authentic feeling and relatable, and yet they chose to film it in black and white, which tends to make it feel, I find that black and white tends to make, because it is something interesting about black and white, it looks really, I think, beautiful, because it like, you take away all color, so you can just focus more on just content and structure of the scene and all these sort of things, but it also then tends to make it feel less like real life, because it's like, almost like this like an art form. Exactly, more of like an artistic rendition of what real life is, and I think that's such an interesting contrast between that and the like lived in authenticity of the movie.
I wanted to ask, what do you think the pitch of this movie was like?
Oh boy. That's a good question. I don't know whether, I am assuming that this movie was not a pitch. So like, I could be wrong. I don't actually know. But I would say that something that is such a kind of personal character study like that is most likely going to be written on spec. It's not going to be something that you go to a producer and you pitch and you say, hey, pay me to write this, right? So what I'm assuming is
to have fun.
Yeah.
With my friend.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm assuming Noah and Greta Gerwig wrote this because I know that they wrote it together, and I find their writing process on it fascinating. They would like each write separately, but like email back and forth.
Oh, interesting. Were they not together yet at this point?
I think,
or were they?
I don't know if they were together. I think that they were, but they were in different cities or something like that, and so they would like she would write a scene and then email it to him, and he would write the next scene and email it back to her. I find that fascinating.
Yeah, that is really fun.
But I'm assuming that they wrote it like that, and I don't think it was a pitch because I think it's a hard movie to pitch. I don't know whether.
Yeah, I don't know how you would pitch it.
And apparently, it falls under the genre of coming of age films.
Yes.
I mean, it is.
But I haven't thought about it because it's an adult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I think that we're seeing that more and more. You see that a lot. We talk about that a lot of like, I mean, the idea of young adult as a genre has really expanded in recent years. It used to be, okay, young adult was ages, what, like 11 to 17? Now it's like...
Young adult 11? Really?
Young adult? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But now I would say it's like up till age like 27, 30, 35. Like,
because millennials.
Yeah, I think that there's probably so many different reasons for it. But I think... I think that like the idea of coming of age can now people have a much more generous application of the term. I think that you can come of age in many different ways in many different times of your life.
Yeah, I was gonna say like it's like we've categorized it where it had to be a certain period, but now it really is like it is like depending on whatever decade you're entering, like a very different experience per person, and like. Yeah, like your 20s are a weird time. I mean, I think that's the thing.
They are.
Well, yeah, they are, and it's weird because, like, like growing up, you're always, you're told you go to college, and then after college, you're an adult, and you figure out your life, and you should have everything together and all that stuff like that. And I know for a fact, for me, like coming out of college, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm gonna do. Like I have a degree and great. Like, and I think that that's what's so nice about the this movie. I have forgotten that she was 27 because I heard that in the movie and I was like, oh, she's older than I thought. Because when I first watched it, I thought she was much younger. And watching it now, especially being 33 now, looking at it, I'm like, yeah, that feels really on par with what I went through. Where it was like, I might not have been as like disastrous, like disorganized, like
going to parties just for a weekend.
Like going to Paris just for a weekend, or like sabotaging myself like that. But I do think that it really does capture something that you go through during that period where it's like I'm getting close to my 30s. I kind of need to start figuring out stuff financially because can't rely on mom and dad for the rest of my life, which is that's also an interesting relationship that she has with her parents too, because they're not very condemning of her either. Like they're very like much almost supportive of
which
her.
Is again, I feel like in the obvious version of the movie, the parents would be the antagonists, right? The parents would be like, get your life together. You're not going to be a dancer. Like, go get an office job. But they're not. They're like supportive as much as they can be, knowing that they don't have deep pockets to help her, right? Like, I just think all that stuff about the movie, it just feels so. Again, the antagonist is her, and but I think that it's like the antagonist is the fact that she needs to come of age, and I do think that it does feel very real to what I think a lot of people in their 20s, especially your like mid to later 20s, you feel that, and I think most especially if you are pursuing a creative field, I think that like the things that you may have thought when you're like 16, 17, you might have thought you would figure it out by like 25, 26, 27. Not
like
so much.
All the dreams that her and her best friend have. Like, I can't wait to look at you across the room and you'll be this successful business person and I'll be...
I really like that scene that it says, not tell the story of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's the very sweet
because
line.
we all kind of do it, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of our coping mechanism too, where we're, at the end of the day, when you're with your friends, you're like, we're doing this all because one day maybe that might be the dream.
Yeah, you dream together. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
But her, I think, I'm not sure if it's, I didn't find it funny. I find it kind of like I was enraged, but they meant it to be funny. When they were meeting with this other girl that Adam Driver had like one son, and she was telling her, "Oh, you look older than 27." And then she was like to her friend, "Do I look older than 27?" He's like, "No, yes." And I'm like, "What they?" But then I was like, "Okay, they wanted to the character to realize that she needs to start maturing." So I think the environment was pushing her to that, and still she was like, "I don't know if I want to go there."
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a resistance to that.
Yeah.
But I mean, being a creative, you can not have an age with creativity, I feel like.
Yeah.
For success. Yeah, 100%. And I mean, I think that scene kind of like underlines a little bit some of the not stereotypes, but like some of the steps that we think we need to achieve at a certain age and a certain point,
Yeah,
right? I think when somebody looks at a 27-year-old, depending on what industry you're in, like if you had gone to law school, you probably would have been coming out of law school, working at a firm, like, and people label that as successful. But as a creative person, it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
What is that journey? And sometimes that journey is to just kind of figure stuff out. And that might mean that you're not the most financially most successful person, but you're like very much on your path, whatever that path is.
Yeah. I also just think that like something that I find so relatable at the movie is just like an obsession with age, and like you can tell by the way she's responded to that question that like it's just something that I think that especially when you're in your late 20s, I'm 29.
Yeah.
I feel that so hard, just like an obsession of like, oh my god, I'm 29, I'm turning 30 soon, like I was 28, like I don't know, I just think that like your brain circles that in a way 100%. That just it feels so momentous and weighty that like you're 27, you should be doing this, but I'm only doing this, and I just think that's a very common relatable feeling.
Yeah, that's true.
100%.
Okay, this movie for me, I cannot fathom, I cannot understand, I cannot put it in words sometimes how patient or non-reactive she is. Like there were times that, especially the young roommate, the short one, he was so annoying and so into her. I mean, he's basically told her that she was undateable. Yeah. So, but she didn't get angry. Almost in all of the movie, rage or anger is not a sentiment she has.
But
unless with her friend.
But that's the thing. I think this movie is something I wish I saw more in films with female protagonists. Her life is not about men. And her life is not about sex. Yeah. Like.
But wait.
In the sense that like she's not enraged by the insult that this guy is saying, because to her that doesn't matter. What matters to her is her friendship with her girlfriend, because that's the person who she came up with. That's the person who she wants to succeed with. There's like this friendship that's more important to her, which I personally in the movie really enjoy, because I feel so much like if this movie was made commercially, she would have dated either Adam Driver or one of the guys.
That's
you know
true.
what I mean?
I didn't want her to date them. But I just want to just shut up.
I didn't think that was that bad of an insult. I almost thought that she was kind of like, I am undateable. Yeah. Like my reaction to that scene was that she was like, yeah, I'm a bit of a mess, and like I don't know. I think she was kind of owning it, and I think that there was almost kind of like a connection between them, because they both realized that they were both undateable. Like that guy and her, because neither of them knew who they were as people, and she was desperately trying to figure it out. And I think that like she knows that, and so like she is like simultaneously the most unself-aware character, and yet also has this weird sense of self-knowledge and self-awareness, and I just think that like juxtaposition is really interesting to me about her character, because she can be so obnoxious and so ditzy and so like clueless. Like there's that dinner scene with fancier older people.
They're an extension of you.
Yeah.
They're like, what are you talking about?
Oh my god.
And she's trying to sound smart. It feels like a kid trying to feel smart.
Absolutely. And like you're just like, Frances, what are you doing?
And shoving bread in her mouth.
Oh my god. Oh my god. And then they offer the pied-à-terre in Paris, and she's like, actually, yes. It's like, I don't know. I just remember, I mean, I was a bit younger than her, so maybe this makes it a little bit better, but I just remember trips that I've taken in my early 20s because I was like, I should want to travel, and so I'm just going to go, and then been kind of miserable on a trip because I'm like, why did I just spend a lot of money to be here? I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing, and I just think that sense of like knowing that you should be doing these things, but not understanding really the full context of who you are, so you can't fully enjoy those things.
Maybe that was my thing, that she didn't have huge ups and huge downs.
Yeah. But I think
that's what
really?
It doesn't.
I find the Paris weekend one of the most depressing sequences in a feature
when she
that I've seen.
sleeps through the day.
Yeah, it makes me so sad.
It makes me so upset.
It makes me anxious. Yeah,
because I'm like, you're in fucking Paris.
I know,
but still,
your ass up.
It makes us, not her. She still looks not. I would, if this happened to me, I would have been like, I need to go out and
But because you would be going to Paris because you want to go see Paris. She went to Paris because she didn't know what she was doing.
But that's what I'm saying. Maybe because she doesn't know what she's doing, her reaction is not that up and down. Yeah. And maybe because I'm older than her, I'm like, okay.
So you think that you wanted her to be like just more emotive in general?
It's not that I wanted her something. It's just like I am observing that this is her like behavior or her reactions. Or like I miss a little bit of
well, I think
this like fire. She had it when she was dancing on the street or something, but then I felt like she was lost in every relationship she had.
Yeah, I think so too. I don't know. I just remember, I mean, it's been a while since I've watched it now, but I remember she comes back from Paris and she's is she in the cab back to her apartment, and she finally gets a call from her friend that was supposed to be in Paris, and she's like, oh, my love, I would love to see you. And she doesn't emote anything, but you can just, at least I can feel that she's just like so down. Like she was like, like, like to me, I felt something there.
I felt, but I wasn't. Sometimes I was like, if I was her, I would have screamed there or something. That's what I missed from her. But it's another person, so it's my projection that I identify with this character or not.
Yeah, because she's an infuriating character. I think that's part of what I love it. It's very similar. Have you guys read Catcher in the Rye, the Salinger novel?
No.
So that's another one that I just go back to a lot, and it's like a very similar character in a lot of ways to me. It's like this like really privileged kid that just kind of spend like a week with him or something in New York while he's just kind of playing hooky from school, and he's obnoxious. Like he's so like desperate for meaning and friends and love and knowing who he is, and you see that in him, and it's really sad to just watch him kind of like navigate around the city, just kind of making like his life progressively worse and worse for himself. It's very similar, and I just find it like, I think that like at a certain point in your life you look at that and it just feels a little bit endearing. Like you're infuriating, but you're also just
you just feel
confused,
bad for them.
And it's almost endearing.
True.
I feel so much empathy.
That's true.
But and I also feel like those scenes are just such learning moments for her in her life too, right? Where like I don't think she really knows how to express her emotions because she's not fully an adult. She feels like a teenager to me. I think that's the thing. Like, and I think that's why when the friend calls him is like, let's meet up. It's like I feel like in that moment to me when I watched it, I was like, she's learning that like life doesn't just play out for you. Do you know what I mean? Like life isn't just like something that like, oh, I showed up in Paris and so now everybody's available and I'm gonna have this like crazy weekend in Paris, like she shows up in Paris and Paris is absolutely nothing like you would imagine. And her friend isn't there, her friend calls her later, and it's kind of like, well, that's life. Like you have to plan ahead. This is what it's like to be an adult. And I feel like in that moment, because then afterwards she changes her life.
After the trip,
she figures it out eventually.
She goes to be an RA, which is not a great, position, but she's trying.
And I think there's just so many little things, like that feeling when like, I don't know, I find it so intensely relatable. Like if you have your person in life, that's your best friend, your best female friend.
Yes.
And that person then finds their own person,
That's
like,
very
that's
hard.
heartbreaking.
I think
Especially
that,
when you're young.
Yes.
Like, especially
Of
when
course.
you're young.
And that's part of growing up, right?
Yeah.
Realizing that the people that you surround yourself with and love and define yourself by, your whatever could be female friendships that are like obviously huge, I'm sure, for every like not losing that, because you just have to find a new iteration of the friendship, which they find by the end of the movie, but like
it's a hard transition though.
oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's awful. That's like
Because
devastating.
like that scene between them reminded me so much of my best friend coming out of high school though.
Yeah.
That was the only we would get into yelling fiascos and like we just realized that we were just like we're just getting older. We just don't have this we're not spending every moment together because we're not 14 anymore. We're going over to your house, you know.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
It's very
so
normal,
I really enjoyed that aspect of the movie. I didn't like her friend. I thought her friend was annoying. But
me too. I didn't like her. I thought it was like, oh, I'm leaving. I'm going to live with Lisa.
Yeah.
I would be like, what, Lisa? Like,
I think though that there's something also about like, I don't know, I have so much sympathy for the friend too. Maybe I don't know. I've just watched this movie so many times that I'm just like, I feel like they're my friends, you know? But like, that's another like intensely relatable thing about it. Like when you grow at different paces from the people around you. Like I think that was just one friend growing in a different direction or maybe a little bit faster than Frances. And
then the resistance of like, I don't have to do the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing with this movie. It's like this time watching it around, like it was funny because I was watching it. I was like, why did I like this? Why don't I like this as much as I did? Because I remember when I first watched it, I was like, oh, this is a really good movie. I really enjoy this. And then watching it now, I was just kind of like, oh, there's something about it that I'm not liking. And I don't think it's that I don't like the movie. I think that I'm just older and I'm looking at these characters and I'm judging them a little bit.
You kind of want to just shake them a little bit.
100%.
Yeah.
Especially Greta. I'm just like, Jesus
Me
Christ.
too.
But I really like the structure of this movie.
Yeah.
Like I really do enjoy movies that kind of strive away from like the typical narration of like storytelling. Like it's very different. Like you said, it doesn't have really a story, but her character has her arc, which I think is something that we don't see often today.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's so, to me, even though I don't like her very much, I still would watch the movie again.
Yeah.
Because I like the way the story is about her and this arc, and I feel like it says so much.
Yeah.
But there's no story. Like there is no, like, it's not like we're with her and it's like she's going to get this like one job and she's going to be a dancer. It's like we join her and we're just kind of like figuring her out as she's figuring herself out.
But I think that's what like life is, right? Like it's like I think the thing that the movie is trying to get at is that in real life there is no structure. There is no 3 acts of like that leads to an inciting incident and then a midpoint and 100%. Then a climax and then a denouement. That's like no, it's like very much like we don't know where we're going and you just kind of have to be along for it and live in the texture of the world that you're in and then figure yourself out and end up where you end up. And I don't know, there's just something that to me is really affecting about that.
And I think that's why this movie's so strong. It's just like just like I remember when I was at USC, you know, having grown up overseas and been so influenced by like international movies that are so different than American blockbusters and just American movies in general. Not that American movies don't have their own, like, obviously, like, Frances Ha is a good example of something that's different.
Yeah, because it's independent.
But USC always wanted us, like, beginning, middle, end. And I remember just being like, this is so annoying. Yeah. Like, I don't want to. Like, because that's not how life works. Like, it should end poorly if this person is doing a shitty thing. And you know, it shouldn't be about, like, this, like, it was just crazy. I always remember just fighting that all the time. But yeah, no, I think Frances Ha really just kind of nails it, really. Yeah.
Oh, how do you think was their collaboration on that? Like on set?
Noah Baumbach and Greta Gerwig? Like in terms of...
But like working with someone that you're like...
That's like a partner? Yeah. I mean, that's a really interesting question.
Yeah.
Especially one of them playing goals being exposed. Because from that...
Fair, she's acting
we can see them like writing the Barbie.
Yeah.
Well, they've done multiple projects.
Yeah, in between, too, but this is the latest we know of them.
Yeah. I think there's something so at least I can't speak to personal experience. I think there's something like so beautiful about having that sort of partnership that's not just a romantic partnership and a life partnership, but also like this intense creative collaboration that lasts many years, and you have some of the results from it that they have. I think that's so impressive. I know that that writing process was them kind of sending it back and forth, which I find writing so, like, at least, not that I'm a writer, but just like from everything I know of it, it's so intensely personal and so vulnerable. I can't imagine being able to like send an unfinished, just quickly jotted down scene over to someone and have them read it. Like that would be
like the trust that they must have between each
That's
other.
So much vulnerability.
Do you think that they have any specific themes or similarities in their projects together?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I think that they have different styles for sure, and I think that but I think that from every like Noah Baumbach has this great lecture that he gave at like, is it like the BAFTAs or something like that I've watched, and watched a lot of like Greta Gerwig interviews and stuff, and I think that they are, even on the projects that are they're not ostensibly partnered on, they still like
influence each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Like they're like, she's like, Noah, come see this. Can you give me notes on this? Like, and vice versa. But I do think you can tell that they have different styles. I do know that from what I've kind of heard that like on set, like I think there's some scene in the movie where she's like walking, I think it's in Adam Driver's apartment or something. She's walking through, maybe it's the morning of the bagel. No, when like the morning where they're like making bagels or whatever, and she's walking through. I think I heard that it's just like her walking against a wall, and he made her do it like 37 times or something like that, even though it's just walking. I could be wrong on the details. I remember reading that somewhere, but it was something like that. So I know he's very meticulous, very thorough, has a really clear idea of what it is he wants.
But he's doing a really good job with that, because I remember watching her at Paris, sitting at this cafe and talking with Sophia, that's her best friend, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, how? It had cuts in between, I think, and I was like, how is he so able to like give us a 5 seconds and we immediately know what he's about to, and see also because she's portraying the character. They did a really good job of, like, she's grounded in the scene, she's in the scene. Although it might be like a couple of seconds.
No, I agree. It's really impressive. But yeah, I'm curious what their dynamic is like on set and stuff. I'd love to be on the fly
even
wall.
not just on a set, like just like
at home. Oh my god, I'm always so curious. Because now they have like kids together and stuff.
I mean, I think one of the things that makes them so similar is that they're both interested in like character arcs, like nobody's business. Like, I think Barbie was probably the most like bombastic and loud movie they've made, maybe together.
Because it was an indie, right?
But which one? Francis?
Barbie.
Oh, Barbie.
It's the only non-indie movie they make, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was indie, and I sat there.
No,
and I was like,
no.
I don't think it
no
was
indie
indie
at all.
Barbie was.
Little Women, I think, probably wasn't, and now they're doing Narnia, so I think they've done.
Was he on Little Women?
I don't know if he's credited, but I'm sure that he had some involvement. But I don't know if he's like officially on it, or maybe he wasn't. But
I just always feel like they both have really interesting character arcs for their for their characters and like their journeys and stuff like that. Even Little Women, which is like a repetition of the same story, right, that we've seen several times, you know, in different renditions of movies, and haven't read the book, but I do think Greta just did I really enjoyed that movie, and I know she wanted more men to go and see the movie because she thinks that it would have been more effective for them to see it, because most women know of Little Woman. But I do think that like she and him both have, I don't know, I just feel like their characters feel relate or like real in a way, like a little bit more like I could run into this person in the street even though I'm watching Little Woman. You know what I mean? Like
definitely
that's
relatable. They're not out of this world.
I also think they both came from like that mumblecore kind of filmmaking style that was in the like 90s and stuff, and you can feel that in like the texture of the worlds that they create, like it all feels very lived in.
Yeah.
Like even Little Women, I'm thinking about like, you know, the scenes of all the women at their house.
Yes.
They're all like talking over each
Yes.
other. The camera is really frenetic. It's moving from place to place.
Yeah.
Everything is warm and loud and fun, and just
Yeah.
they interrupt each other, and it's like you kind of
Or
miss bits of
natural.
dialogue.
Yeah.
It also feels very naturalistic. It all feels like lots of intense overlapping dialogue.
Yeah.
It's the same with like Meyerowitz stories and Squid
Yeah.
and the Whale and all of their things.
So I know we have been talking about how difficult it is this movie to, pitch this movie to like a studio or even, I don't know, maybe a sponsor
Yeah.
or someone to fundraise it, to give you funds. So when you're getting scripts, I'm assuming you get so many scripts. What are some of the things you are looking for? And I know each production company has its needs and, different styles they are looking for. But what's something for you that you're generally, if I see those things, oh, okay, I'm going to look at it again and again and again.
I mean, that's a good question. It's a hard question because it changes constantly and it's different for every, executive's personal taste and every producer's personal taste, and also depending on what their company is looking for. And, it could be the kind of thing that, like, let's say we have a movie that comes in that's about golf, and it's an incredible movie, like tear-jerking, amazing movie, but we already have a movie on our slate about golf that we've spent a lot of money in. We'll have to say no. You know what I mean? Like so you never really know. I think that for most producers though, there's kind of like the mandates that you are trying to fill, and then there's your personal taste. So in terms of kind of like the mandates, it's obviously different per different companies. I think that and it's kind of one of the bigger frustrations about this business is that it sometimes can feel, especially in like the TV space, it can sometimes feel that those mandates are just like constantly changing.
Yeah.
Like every 4 months it's like something completely different according to the latest studio reorg that's been going on, and so I think that like trying to kind of find the content that feels like it's like everlasting amid those ever-changing mandates is ultimately just what is a really good story, right? And I think that you can get really kind of like in the weeds of like whether there's meaningful cast attached, whether it feels like it hits the zeitgeist at the right time, whether it like fulfills this streamer's requirement that they want like young adult romance under 35, but it can't be period, but it has to be this, but it has to be, you know what I mean? Like ultimately what's going to do well on any platform and any theatrical release is anything that is just a good story. So for me, the things that the first thing that I think about is just I try to like abstract away from all the kind of over intellectualizing and over kind of like, from the more producerial side of my brain, and just think like, okay, is this like, do I have an emotional reaction while reading this? Do I care? Like, that's truly, that really is, do you care? Do you care about the stories? Do you care about the characters? Does it stay with you after you finish reading? While you're reading, do you actively want to keep turning the page and keep going? Or after a few pages, you're kind of like getting distracted, looking at your phone, like thinking about other things? Is it the kind of story that's going to, when you're driving home that night, your brain just naturally goes and thinks about more,
Oh, wow, that's a good sign.
And so I think that like, having that initial gut reaction is so important. In terms of my like personal taste of what I kind of look for, I have like kind of buckets that I love, but I always am happy to be surprised. So like there are specific things that I just know work really well for like me personally. So like for me, it's like grounded genre. Like I love like, I really like horror and sci-fi, but I don't personally tend to stray towards the stories that are a bit more like grounded, like Our Real World, that maybe has like the one buy-in that makes it a little bit more interesting, like the one horror buy-in or the one sci-fi buy-in, like something like maybe like Ex Machina or Her or even like Arrival or something, like the more kind of grounded, beautiful movie. And the other thing is I really like movies that feel like it's kind of like that gives me access to kind of an environment that I wouldn't otherwise get to learn about. So like anything that feels kind of like some microcosm of society that's public kind of doesn't necessarily have access or knowledge to.
Like Parasite, or am I?
I do love that movie, but I guess I'm speaking more about like, well, I was telling you this. I saw the new Ed Berger movie last night. It's called Conclave.
Oh, yeah.
Did you watch it?
I haven't seen it yet, but everyone's been talking about it.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
It's and it's the kind of movie that if you had told me about it, I'd be like, no way am I interested in that.
Yeah,
it's about the papacy. So it's about like
The what?
the
Papacy.
Pope. Like if the Pope.
Papacy. Okay.
Yeah.
He
So
was.
the Pope in the movie, the Pope has died, and in Rome, all of the different Catholic cardinals have to assemble, and they have to form something called a conclave, which is a real thing that they do to figure out who is going to be the next Pope.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a very kind of like intense, gathering with all these rules and processes of how they vote and how they campaign,
forever.
and it can last a long time. I don't care about
Yeah.
the papacy.
Yeah.
I don't. I
But
really
why?
don't.
But why?
No part of me knows about this.
Yeah.
If you had told me like a movie about choosing the next pope, I'd
You'd
been
be
like,
yeah,
no, thank
I'm
you.
good. Yeah.
And
But
yet
why?
it's fascinating.
Yeah.
It brings you into this world, and it makes you care about the papacy. Like it makes you care about who is going to be the next pope, how they're choosing it, the weird kind of subtle campaigning that the cardinals do with each other, the
It's
voting
very well.
processes. All of these things, and it's this very kind of like sharp, contained, cerebral thriller about this world that I never would have cared about or even known about if it wasn't for the way that it was presented on screen.
Right.
I tend to love stories that do that. But those are just a couple of the buckets.
What is the craziest pitch you've ever heard? Or
The craziest pitch that I've ever
you were
heard.
like, what is this? Like,
Oh my God, one time, and I'm not going to say where this was
No,
to
you don't
protect
have
this
to.
poor man's privacy. So I was sitting down in a room with a guy, and he was pitching me a feature. And the feature, he started saying, this is based on my life. It's all a true story. And it was about his childhood. With his dad, they went on this big trip together that ended up being really difficult and traumatic in different ways. And halfway through the pitch, he bursts into tears.
Oh,
and I'm like
God.
sitting there, and
no.
he has 5 minutes to finish pitching it. Like it's a 5-minute very strict time limit. And at like minute 3, he bursts into tears and starts sobbing because he's so emotionally connected to the story that he, brings up all of this like childhood trauma, I think, and memories for him. And I'm sitting there trying to like calm him down, being like, it's okay, it's okay.
God.
But also looking at my watch, being like, he has like a minute left, 30 seconds left, and he hasn't finished his pitch because he literally cannot get the words out of his mouth. And then the 5 minutes were up, and I had to be like, I'm so sorry, but you can't. And he was like crying, and it was just awful. And I had to like tell him that like, I'm sorry, your time is up, I have to leave. And it was just really, really terrible. So that's probably the worst pitching experience I can think of.
was the story good from what?
Honestly, he didn't get through enough of it for me to tell.
No,
I couldn't tell
He
you.
did the therapist before.
I know it was rough. I felt really bad for him. But yeah, you hear wild things all the time. I think that everyone is always trying to, come up with the
next
new
big
crazy
thing,
big thing. And I think a lot of people think that like if they shock you, then that's what's fresh and interesting. And so you hear wild things all the time. But the most important things for a pitch is really like, what is the story? Why should I care about the story? What makes it unique, and why are you the person to tell it? And keep it short and sweet and pithy, and
Don't cry.
Don't start crying.
Don't cry.
And that really is.
Oh, this reminds me
best
of Baby
approach.
Reindeer. Have you watched it?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Imagine, I don't know what's the process for making this project,
Yeah.
but imagine him pitching that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's based
I mean,
on
he
his own
played
story,
it also. Like,
Yeah.
he was the main
Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
Yeah, I'm sure that brought up some drama for him too.
Yeah.
Hopefully he
Yeah.
made it through without crying. Okay. Which profession do you think is best portrayed on film or TV, and which don't? Which
which one doesn't, yeah.
Which one is not? Okay.
I
Wait,
mean,
I have to answer it or you answer?
We can
all
answer after
answer,
you, but
yeah. Okay.
I know what you're gonna say.
What am I going to say? Wait, what do you think I was going to say?
Lawyer.
Oh yeah. The first thing that did pop into my mind was Suits. Okay, no. Which profession do you think is best portrayed on film? Well, after just watching Conclave, I feel like Ralph Fiennes plays this deacon character, who has a very hard job of running the conclave of this papal whatever thing it is that they are nominated in the next one, and it is a hard job. So that is the first one that popped into my head. So I'm gonna just say that. The deacon of whatever he's called.
So this is the best.
Yes, I think it's the best example. No, it's probably not. It's the first one that came into my head. And which one isn't? I get. Oh gosh, I don't know.
Suits would be a great example. I just don't think.
Yeah, that's okay. I watched Suits in high school, and it made me want to be a lawyer, and then I realized that that's not what lawyers do. So that is a good example. It's very exciting and thrilling, but I don't think it is at all real.
I also think what's her name's character, Meghan Markle's? No, it's not her character. It's the guy who's pretending to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
That would just not happen.
No,
there's
absolutely
so
not.
many.
Well, and also they jump between practicing criminal law one day to
To
civil law to property
They're a law
law
firm
to
that does
real estate law to
everything.
family
And they
law.
know everything.
And it's that's
Every
not
law.
how, I don't think it's how it works. And then they take on a case, and then 20 minutes later they're at trial, and it's that actually takes 7
it takes a
months or
And
years.
everyone's so hot.
Everyone.
That's so true.
Grey's Anatomy too, doctors.
Oh my
I feel
gosh,
that's
yeah.
also one that you're just it's
Yeah.
not what it's like on
No,
the daily
not at
basis.
all.
I don't. Sometimes they depict doctors.
I was a big House fan, and I
I
love House. And I was crushed when my friend's mom, who was a doctor, told me that there is no such thing as a diagnostician, which is what House was.
That's true, but
like an
the
investigator.
surgeon or something, they portray. I think they portray them well.
Well, I know that Grey's Anatomy gets a lot of the lingo right and a lot of the jargon and everything that they do right, but I think more than anything, it's that part I feel is easy to get right on a film because you have research that's being done, you have people consulting. I think it's always just kind of the life that they lead is so exciting, and you're always just kind of
they need to up the drama.
I know.
And everything. Oh, another one is Industry. Do either of you watch Industry?
No.
Oh my gosh, it's so good. Season 3 was so good, but it's the world of high finance kind of in London, and just it's intense, and I'm sure it's not that intense in real life, but I think that they do a really good job of at least I believe it. It'll be we need a short sterling to do this, and I'll be yeah, you need to do that. I believe it.
Please go do that.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the best portrayed and the worst portrayed?
I don't know, because fiction is, I feel is never really truly on the nose.
The closest they can do, let's say.
The closest they can do. God, I don't know. It's a tough one.
For me,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have watched Superstore.
No, I didn't watch that.
I think it's my favorite.
That's a good one, because that's
a
much. I'm sure that's actually more real as to what those
The Office
people.
feels pretty
That's
true.
a good point.
You see?
That's
Michael
a good one.
Scott is a little bit extra, and I think he would have probably been fired.
But I also think it's probably
everyone
based
else,
on a real regional. I feel like there's probably a regional manager out there for some small company like that does
where
act
you're
that.
Ooh,
Yeah.
did you just say something problematic?
Yeah.
You
Exactly.
see, they can portray it.
Yeah.
The closest, obviously. I think it's a profession, because you get paid, that tends to to present it as cook or weird is anything that has to do with the alternative healing stuff. That was a good question.
It was.
Yeah.
Good job, Kelly.
Pink. All right. Which fictional movie character would you hire as your personal assistant, and why? Okay. My first thought was Andy from The Devil Wears Prada.
Oh yeah.
Yes, that's
I don't know why. I don't know if it's do I this is kind of concerning. Do I see myself as a Miranda Priestley?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it's our mind goes to.
Okay.
Unless you are, I don't know.
Because she was. I rewatched that movie recently. She got really good at her job. like
Yeah.
Yeah,
to
amazing.
the expense of her personal life.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I feel I relate. My personal life has oftentimes fallen apart in my
Yeah,
careers.
because
But if you're doing well in your career, at least you have that. But
Well, that's a great pick.
I don't know. I just feel like she did really well. She like that scene where she gets the Harry Potter manuscript
Oh,
of the
yeah.
unpublished, like on the train, bound, already. Like
Yeah.
that is like.
What a great assistant.
I spent so many
Yeah.
years as an assistant in the film industry,
Ooh.
so I think I can specifically appreciate
you
that
guys
of like
get
how
shit
and like
on.
how hard that job is.
Yeah.
You're just given these impossible demands, but like
Yeah. Somehow make it happen.
so impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. I never really give her credit in that
Yeah.
movie.
I know.
When I think about it.
I think it's so funny that like the movie. I talked about this with a friend recently. The movie makes it out to be like, you know, she tried really hard for a while, but it kind of ruined her personal life, and she ultimately decided that she wanted to choose her personal life.
Yeah.
I 100% respect that, but I do think that there's a different perspective on the movie of like you could be like, well, why couldn't her boyfriend just chill out for a little bit and like let her have her career for a bit? That was maybe where she needed her energy. I also think that like it's never worth working for a toxic boss like that, and it was probably not
Well,
what
I-
she wanted to
I
be
think
doing.
so
But
it was
too.
extreme. They're like,
yes,
I'm sure, unfortunately, there are people like that, but
Yeah.
she was extreme.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Like,
No,
get me the new manuscript for Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I know.
No, I'm a firm believer that work does not need to be like that chaotic and
Absolutely
stressful.
not.
And I think like our industry has a lot of that where it's
Yeah.
like you work in the film industry,
Yeah,
you have no life.
yeah, exactly.
You can't be a human being.
Or
And you're
just
like,
that like
why?
that if you work in film, then you should be like okay with just being screamed at all day,
Yes.
or
Oh, no,
verbally
no, no.
abused,
Oh my
or you know like that. No, absolutely not.
Working camera, I've been yelled at so many
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I
To the
bet.
point where I'm just kind of like,
It just like bounces off you
doesn't
now.
faze you
Yeah.
anymore.
I mean that's a good life skill, but still,
I
no one
know,
should be
it's like, no one
subjected
should-
to that.
No one should be put through it.
No.
I have a great like just.
Yeah. Like a.
That's not like okay.
Yeah. I get you. What about you guys? What's personal
I'm
assistant would
trying
you
to
hire?
think. I
Yeah,
want
me
to see
too.
that's funny also.
And Alfred from
Oh yeah, that's also
Wait,
good.
Michael
that's
Caine
a good one.
specifically.
I would love Alfred as my
Michael Caine.
assistant.
Can you imagine?
I feel like that would make me feel
Welcome
so
home.
classy.
I know,
If
welcome
I
home,
had him
yeah.
just kind of walking around
Yeah.
doing my stuff
Would
for
you like
me.
a martini?
Yeah, I'd be like,
But
sure.
also
I can't
knows
do a Michael
everything
Caine
in
accent.
technology. As
Absolutely.
like a helper of Batman.
yeah.
Okay, maybe one that's more like came to mind right now. The the lady from the Dalmatians, the old lady,
Which one?
the 101 Dalmatians, the Disney movie.
Wait, which old lady?
The one that she takes care of the house, I guess. She's fun. She kind of
I don't
fun.
even remember
like
her
a
in that
sneaky
movie.
It's my favorite movie when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's a good one,
That
I
was a
guess.
good-
Okay,
Yeah.
want to do another one or stop it?
I don't know. It's up to you.
How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm down to do another one. These are fun.
Kelly loves these.
I love
They're
this.
fun.
This
It's
should
like
be the
fun
whole
favorite.
podcast.
It's her favorite part.
No, I like these. They're a good idea. Okay, I'm gonna go for. Ooh, I'm gonna go for blue.
Do it.
Because you get to think of all the movies, and then it's nice whatever everyone picks. You know. Okay.
Okay. What? Ooh, this is a hard one. What's a scene or a moment in a film that you think if you had developed it, you'd have made differently?
Yeah.
Oh.
Hard
The first one.
question.
Damn. I feel like.
What is something that I would have changed? Trying to think. Okay.
It can be a film, so if it's easier, be like, I would make it more dramatic or make it more comedic or something.
Right.
Because the scene might be kind of difficult to be like, this episode season
Yeah.
5.
I'm also gonna try not to crap all over a movie that exists.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah,
want to.
yeah,
Okay, let me think. I guess. Okay, maybe this is a. I'm gonna be very. This is maybe an obvious answer, but I was a big Game of Thrones fan.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love Game of
in
Thrones.
college and in high school, and it was a big it was really one of the first TV shows for me that felt like it turned into like event based viewing for me. Like in college, every Sunday night, me and everyone else in my dorm would get together, would watch the new episode, and it was such a big part of our like lives and routine. And I think that show meant a lot to a lot of different people, and it went on for many years, and I think it was so impressively done, and I have so much respect for the creators and the people involved in that. I think that we all have certain feelings about the way that it ended if you've watched it. And I think that like I think about that a lot, of just like the responsibility that filmmakers or like creatives have to the audience when you've had something that goes on for years and years, of landing the plane in a way that feels satisfying and cathartic and emotionally makes sense and feels, you know, good for the people that love the content that you've made. And it's not like it's on one hand I'm like, I don't want to say that like they owe it to the audience, but I also kind of feel like you owe it to the audience
a little bit,
you know. And it's the same
with, make it for them, you think
absolutely about it. And I think that like obviously it's a difficult thing and they must feel so much pressure, but I think that show is one that like if I was obviously in no way involved, but I think that like it would have been nice to kind of change some things about like the last couple seasons. And I think that like it's also, you know, I don't know if it was
one thing that you might have changed.
I think that like it maybe feels a bit rushed. I think that my biggest issue with it is that like you've spent years and years setting up these super intricate dimensional characters and storylines, and it's also complex and interrelated, and then not taking the time and energy to like take your time to let it build naturally, and instead just kind of like ignore half the things you've set up, rush the ending for some characters, just kind of wipe the slate, and just, I don't know, I think that is such a missed opportunity. And I think that there was so much kind of care and talent involved in, you know, putting it together. It's just a shame that like it didn't feel like it landed in a way that felt.
Which one hurt the most?
I think for me, the one that hurt the most character-wise was, I think that Daenerys' character line was really tough for me to, it felt like, I think that it could have worked, what they decided to do, her arc of like, you know, you believe in her for so many seasons, she feels like she's going to be this savior and like different, and
she turns
and then she ends up turning, like becoming kind of a little bit too big for her britches. And like all of a sudden is just kind of, and that happens so quickly. And I think that there is a way, I think that's actually a really interesting arc.
I do too.
And I think if they had drawn it out and kind of put more care and into like making it feel natural and like a natural progression, it would have worked. I even like think that like the dynamic between her and Jon Snow was really interesting. It just again was crammed way too fast. You could tell that they didn't really know what they were doing, and then all of a sudden we're just like, hey, we need to finish it. That one really bugged me. And then also Arya, the young Stark girl
at the end,
like the daughter, like the one that was like, remember she had that whole side quest where she went to like the many
places,
never paid off. The wolf that she lost never paid off. Like all of this stuff that you feel like is gonna go somewhere and just never ends up actually paying off. That is like, it's like storytelling 101, right? Of like, if you set something up early on, you need to pay it off. Like if the gun appears in Chekhov's gun, like if the gun appears in Act 1, the gun needs to reappear in Act 3. Like that is the basic tenets of storytelling, and it's so frustrating when that doesn't happen, because it's like, why? We all know this.
For me, definitely agree both of those, with both these characters. The most annoying thing was the traveling. Like we were waiting 7 seasons for them to go from Westeros. And then you see during a season they travel everywhere. Like the dragons in 5 minutes they were in the wall. On the wall.
You're so right. It's
I
like
was so like things happening.
Cersei's death was very disappointing to me too.
I agree.
I love Cersei.
I mean she's just such this like bitch. Right? This stoic,
but very, very well written.
Really well written, and like I mean I never liked her as a person, right? But like
interesting character.
She dies in the arms of her brother in fear. And that to me felt so inauthentic to her. Like I'm okay with her being fearful of death, because I ultimately think a lot of her evilness comes from the fear of like death and mortality. But the way it was handled to me felt like so like, what?
Yeah.
Like her? Come on, guys.
Yeah.
Like, give me something.
I know. No, really
They
unsatisfying.
rushed through that season.
It's such a shame.
Yeah, because it was a good show.
Yeah.
Good show.
And it's just like when you have something like that has captured the cultural imagination in such a huge way. I mean, it's kind of a
good
shame.
one.
Yeah.
What about you? I'm trying to think right now.
Mine's gonna be really. I had to think about, like, I was like, when was the last time I was really aggravated about something? And like, I tend, when I go and see a movie now and I'm like not happy with it, I kind of like go like, well, I know so much about the film industry and I know
how hard
because
everything
you know
is.
what happened with HBO and with Game of Thrones, so it's hard to be like you were saying, like, you don't want to shit on people because it's also like you're in development now, like you know what some of that shit can be like. But I remember when I first got into film, I was really into musicals, and I think part of it just has to do with the fact that, like, they were just fun. Like, Singing in the Rain was, like, always, like, one of those, you know, I think everybody's staple. But I went to go see Les Mis, and I had to read, you know, I read the book at school, and, like, Les Miserables,
Les Miserables,
the musical. And
which one of all? Because they have like 100.
The one with Hugh Jackman and Anne Hathaway.
Okay.
So I went to go see that one, and you know, it got like, it did pretty well. Like, it was a really good movie. And I remember just being like, this movie is crap. Like, it's not good.
Yeah.
Like, it relies on its IP and it relies on its great music to sell a product. But story-wise, they've done nothing to it. And I remember just being so aggravated because I was, like, so young and, like, I was like, it's all close-ups.
Yeah.
There's nothing new to this story. And everybody was moved by it because, like, the music's great, but, like, what's his name was terrible in it.
Hugh Jackman.
No, not Hugh. Oh, no.
Oh,
Hugh Jackman was the
Russell
greatest.
Crowe.
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I don't know why
you
they
couldn't like every time Russell Crowe came on screen and sang, like, I just wanted to laugh, like, and I remember just like people being like, oh my god, it was so good, and me just being like, I would have done it so differently. Like, I would have like casted it so differently. Like,
Russell Crowe in the musical, I don't know, that's a very I don't know how
a lot of money was thrown at that movie. Like,
but how he was
so much
convinced.
money.
I don't know that. Did he sing in that movie?
Russell Crowe? Yeah, man.
Does he sing?
Yes. My name is Jean Valjean. Literally, like, that's what it sounds like.
I had no idea that he could sing. Okay.
I mean, and it's like, because it's like, you know, Mamma Mia, what's his name, Pierce Brosnan can't sing, but it works. Like, it fucking works for that movie.
Yeah. Really can sing. I was like,
Pierce
I mean, I'm not saying he's the best singer.
No.
But
but it works for the movie.
He performed it instead of singing.
Yes. I think it works for the movie because, like, the movie's kind of kitsch and fun, and, like, you're on a journey with these guys and also like that. But Les Mis is such a intense and deep and emotional story.
Very dark.
And I remember it just, I could tell even at that time when it came out, and I was super young, right? But like, I just remember feeling in that moment like, oh my god, somebody just gave someone a ton of money and they were like, go make this movie.
It happens.
And it's like, and that's what I'm saying, like, that's like, you know, that's the industry, but also like, I don't think you added anything new to the conversation about it. Like, I know, I think Anna Hathaway won an Oscar or was nominated for an Oscar.
I remember. I remember there was some awards.
I don't think she got an Oscar. Has she got?
I think she maybe was nominated. I remember like everyone was very impressed with her performance, which, like, granted, Anne Hathaway is an incredible like actress and all the stuff like that, but I just remember being like, it's lived in close-ups. It's the music that's selling this story, and everybody's like, oh my god. And I'm just like, it's not as good. Yeah. And that's the one movie that I'm always just kind of like, I don't know what about it, but I'm always just like, it's just close-up of people singing. And I wish they had done it differently, because it could have gone so many ways, and it didn't. Yeah.
Interesting.
At least for me. But
no, makes sense.
But Hugh Jackman was great in it. They all, like, everybody sang really well except for Russell Crowe. I'm sorry, Russell Crowe.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had no idea that he could sing. I had no idea.
I mean, it's musical, so it's like lyric singing. It's
but still, you want someone that is kind of good. For me, I don't know if you agree or not, but I have an issue with the first Black Panther. Not a big issue, but I really like the movie, obviously.
Yeah.
But my thing is that the antagonist in the first one, I don't think he was wrong. For me, this guy wanted to, what he wanted, it, I didn't understand why he was killed. I think he was very, okay, he did it in a way that it's my way or the highway, but still, what he wanted, I didn't feel it was bad. I felt
Wait,
that
what did he want?
he wanted basically not to use the, what's it called, the specific crystal gem that they,
Oh, to hide the world.
no, he
Did
wanted,
you ever watch it?
yeah, I don't remember even the no,
I
what?
worked at Marvel.
You're like trying not to.
What's the name of the, with the, everything is made out of their,
Yeah,
costumes
I think I
and-
sort of remember the thing. It was like
not
he
uranium, not
he couldn't understand why if this
No,
power
he-
existed, they wouldn't have helped
no,
black
he
communities.
he
Yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
take
yeah.
it and to help their community.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes.
Yeah.
No,
no.
you don't. And I understand that they want to keep it because they want to preserve it because they didn't want to ruin it from.
Yeah.
But they were so powerful that he was so right.
Yeah.
I felt like his death
Yeah.
wasn't, but
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
yeah,
I completely
Interesting.
forgot about that.
he's one of the villains that I was with him.
Yeah.
Like, why is villain?
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. I have to rewatch that movie now and see if I feel the
Yeah.
same. I don't remember it enough, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah, because he wanted them to help
Yeah.
the rest of the
Yeah.
world.
I think that it's a funny thing because I think most writers and producers and stuff, like I think that like you tend to think that you want a villain that you can sympathize with a little bit, right? Because I think that makes it a lot more of like
Yeah.
an emotional motivation
yeah,
for
of
a
course,
villain
makes sense,
if you
yeah.
can see why they believe what they
Yeah.
do, right? Because I don't think that there's many true villains in the world. I think there is a lot of
Yeah.
people that are accidentally villains because they think that what they're doing is the right thing for some reason, right? But I think that then if you go a little bit too far in the direction, then it becomes too sympathetic, and then the audience is kind of like, wait, well, why are they the villain if he is not
Yeah.
doing? Yeah, it's
Well,
interesting.
There you
I'm gonna
go.
have to watch it. Okay.
Very different movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Very different movies.
Yeah.
Well, any last notes before we? Thank
This
you.
was great. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you.
Yes.